Hello and welcome back to the Chaps Guide. I'm Ash, the curator of this channel, which aims to provide you with life skills, knowledge and tips which will help you on your journey to being the best chap that you can be. Now this is episode number 3 in a short series that I'm running on learning more about public speaking and communication skills. I've been a semi-professional public speaker for a decade now, and I'm using this opportunity to pass on some tips that I have hard earned during that last 10 years, so that you don't have to make the mistakes that I have. If you haven't seen the previous 2 episodes, link them below in the description for this video. So please go and check them out so you know exactly where we're coming from and you don't miss out on any of the skills that I'm going to give you today. This particular episode is all about stagecraft. What does that mean? Well, stagecraft to me is the way that you conduct yourself when you're on stage. I use the word stage as a bit of a euphemism. It could just as easily mean that you're sat in front of a panel of people if you're having an interview for a job or an interview for promotion, or you're leading a briefing with people on your team, or you're at a meeting where you have to speak, or a conference, or any event where you have to share information with one or more people. These are the tips that will help you get that message across as best as you can. Now, the first thing I would say, because we've talked about in the previous episodes, we've talked about preparing for the anxiety. We've talked about preparing when it comes to getting the logistics of the situation. Now we are in front of the audience. And this is about stagecraft. Stagecraft is you performing the best that you can. And the first tip is know your audience. A lot of people have this terrible fear that the audience are going to be waiting for them to make a terrible mistake, that they're all there just waiting to see you fall flat on your face. When the reality is anything but that. Most people are willing volunteers who've come to see you speak, or are being paid to see you speak in many cases. So they're there, they're glad to hear what you've got to say, and the message that you're going to give them is something that they want to learn. So get away from this thought that the people you're standing in front of are waiting to see you fall flat and look a fool, because that's not the case. Now, one of the reasons why we can feel a bit like this is quite often we're speaking to strangers. Right? Real anxiety around public speaking comes when you speak to strangers, you don't know who you're going to talk to, and that really gets your fear going. So one way you can overcome that is not to speak to strangers. What do I mean by that? Well, if you are speaking in an environment, say a conference or a meeting where you're going to engage with people you don't know, meet them as they come into the room. Shake their hands, introduce yourself. Even if there's hundreds of people coming in, you can walk amongst them, say hello, just make those pleasant conversations that people do. Ask where they've parked, what the weather's like outside, have you come far, all those sort of things. And it just breaks down that invisible barrier between you and them, you being the speaker, them being the audience, and never the twain should meet. That doesn't have to be the case. We can make that early contact, and that way, when we stand up, we've already met the audience, we know that they're just human, they're not waiting to see us make a flop of ourselves, and it just helps with your confidence and helps you deliver that thing. Now, when you're speaking to the audience, you can take feedback from them to see how they're reacting. And the best way to do that is to make eye contact. Look people in the eyes when you're speaking with them. It doesn't matter if the audience is 100 in size. When you're standing in front of them, try and make eye contact with at least everybody in the room at least once. That's what I always try to do when I speak to large groups of people. Or if it's too many people in the audience, if there's, say, a couple of 100 people and it's going to be impossible for you to make positive eye contact with everyone in the room, sweep your eyes across the audience in quarters. So look at your audience, break them up into 4 quarters, speak to the top left corner, and while you're speaking to them, sweep your eyes across the people in the audience. Move to the top right quarter, do exactly the same, and keep moving around the audience, looking at each different quarter of the audience as you're giving your presentation. And this will give the impression of you paying attention to everybody in the room, every corner of the room, and that making eye contact with them, it just brings a personal connection. Now, if you've got a relatively small audience, you can pick somebody in the audience and speak to them directly. And again, that really builds this bond between you and the audience. They really get this sense of connectivity with you. And if you're able to deliver your presentation in a conversational style, as we've talked about in some of the previous episodes, it really encourages them to believe what you're saying and remember what you're saying. So it's all about the way that you deliver it. Responding to that feedback that you see in the eye contact is also important. So if your audience are sat there, twiddling their thumbs, looking out through the window, playing on their mobile phones, hand on the on the palm, you can tell they're not really listening, they're just in the room with you. That is important feedback. And if you see that happening in the audience, that is your cue to do something about it. You have got this chance to communicate your information to the people in the audience. If you don't take advantage of that because you let them sit there bored, you're missing your opportunity to share your message. So what you have to do is grasp this moment and do something different. Increase the pitch of your voice. Walk around the room. Stop for a moment and ask a question. Engage the audience. Get them to look at you again. You might suggest, does anybody want to have any questions at this point? Anything like that. Anything which breaks the monotony that they feel they're experiencing at this point. And then when you get back into the presentation, energize yourself. Make yourself more energetic. When you're up there on stage, you've got to own that situation and you've got to deliver that information in the best way that you can, engaging those people, whatever it may do. Get that eye contact going. If people know that you're going to look them in the eye, they're not going to be drifting off looking out through the window. They're going to be engaged, they will sit up in their seat and they will look at you, listen to what you say and believe what you're saying. Remember what you're saying. Remember, that's what you're there to do, to get that message across. And when it comes to the way that you present yourself and deliver the information, there's one word which I've heard used many times when it comes to public speaking. Authenticity. Be yourself. Now, a lot of people, when they think about public speaking situations, they think they've got to rise to the occasion. They've got to put on a bit of a different persona because that's what people expect from a public speaker. Well, I don't recommend that, because if you do that and you meet somebody that you were presenting to next week and they meet the real you, they're going to be a bit disappointed. It's far better if you're just yourself and you be the person that you are. All your quaint little foibles included. However, one thing I would say, if you are quite a quiet person, a bit reticent, you're not super confident, public speaking demands more of you than anybody else, right? The confident person can probably take a lot easier to public speaking. The quieter person needs to put more effort in. You have to own that situation. And what I say to people, turn up the volume by at least 25%. Because when you're up there on stage and people are watching you, you need to ramp it up so that everybody in the room listens to you and they connect with that thing that you're saying. So if you're conscious that you're a quiet person who likes to sort of mumble a bit and look down at the ground because you don't like making eye contact, and you always put your hand in front of your face because it makes you a little less nervous, it's not going to work. You have got to look up, look them in the eye, speak up, throw your shoulders back and own this moment, because it is your opportunity to communicate this message, which is clearly important because you're there standing in front of other people delivering it. So just think of that. Imagine that you're raising that volume up a level. Don't worry if you've got an accent. I've got a bit of a regional accent myself. I'm from Wales. It doesn't embarrass me. It's my unique selling point. And wherever you are from as well, that's your unique selling point. So don't worry if you're an Australian, an American, or you're a non-English speaker and you're delivering your presentation in English and you're conscious that you've got a thick accent from your natural mother tongue. Don't worry about it, right? It's your unique selling point. People will remember you because of that quaint little thing, your accent or the way that you speak. And that will be how part of their remembering process around the presentation that you deliver. So don't be embarrassed. Don't try and change it. Don't think that because you're speaking in public, you've suddenly got to find, a BBC news presenter's voice, because that's how they speak, with a cut glass accent and in a certain fashion, as they did in the 50s. Well, you don't need to do that. Stick to your own voice, because that's you, and you are the star of the show. One thing you can also do is be conscious of using ums and ahs in your speech. Right? Lots of people, when they're very nervous, they speak very quickly. I think it's because they want to get through the presentation as quickly as they can, and when your brain is stretching to remember what to say next and it forgets for a moment, you'll go and it is really distracting to the audience. It doesn't make you look like a good speaker either. And you can see if you're doing that. For a start, if you're practicing, it's not really a good time to see if you're doing that, because often when you're practicing, you're under less pressure, so you don't tend to do it so much. But if you've got the opportunity to practice on other people the presentation you intend to give, good idea, get your mobile phone, prop it up against the wall and video your presentation. Then watch it back and you can see if you're one of those people who say ums and ahs all the time and distracts your audience, because ultimately it takes something away from your presentation. And it's an important presentation, so you don't want any distractions. So be conscious of saying ums and ahs. A good way of curing it is slow down the pace. One of the reasons why we say and ah all the time is because we're speaking too quickly and our brain can't keep pace. So slow down, speak in your normal fashion, and you will find that you can get rid of those gaps with ums and ahs. If you do find yourself clutching in your mind for what to say next, a pregnant pause can add a bit of gravitas and an element of importance to the occasion. So just instead of going just be silent for a moment, and actually people will refocus on what you're saying and they will listen even more intently to the next words that come out of your mouth. So a little silence now and again can be very useful for you. Now when you're up in front of the audience or speaking publicly on any occasion, think about your body language. We know that non-vocal communications, MVCs, provides a higher level of communication between humans than actually the spoken word. So you need to be conscious of the way that you're holding yourself, the way that you're perhaps standing on stage. You might be somebody who puts your hands in your pockets and then before you know it, you're twiddling the change in your pockets, and that becomes really distracting. So find a way that's comfortable for you to stand in front of the audience. It doesn't matter if you like to walk around. It doesn't matter if you like to stand firmly rooted to the ground. But think about the way that you're coming across to the people in the audience. Perhaps it would be better if you walked from one side of the stage to the other, if that's the situation that you're speaking in, of course, and because it engages people in the different segments of the audience. So little things like that, good tips. And just try and be conscious of those distractions, like twiddling change or, humming or, putting your hands in your pockets. Think about the way you're standing, the way that you'll be portrayed. Again, video yourself. See if the way that you look on stage is what you imagine in your mind that you want to look like. And you can make some changes to that. So those are just some of the tips that I've given you today around making yourself as good as you can as a public speaker. Remember, know your audience. Say hello to them when they come in. Shake their hands. Things like that. Make eye contact with them when they're in the room so that they know that you're speaking and you'll be looking at them from time to time. Respond to the feedback that you see when you're looking at them. If they're looking bored, quiet, they're not paying attention, do something. This is your moment to shine. It's not going to happen unless you make it happen. You're the focus of attention. Be authentic. Be yourself. But if you're a quiet person, turn up the volume a little. Don't worry about an accent. Just be conscious if you say ums and ahs now and again. And think of your body language. Right? Make yourself look the man or woman that you want to be when you're on stage. Be the best chap that you can. Now in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about the content of your presentations, particularly if you use PowerPoint, Keynote, Prezi, or these host of other slide platforms which people tend to use when they're presenting to others. So I'm going to talk about some things that make the best material and content when you're preparing your slides to give you the best chance of success when the time comes. So I look forward to speaking to you very soon. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, look at the other two which have come before us, and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the little notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any future material that we publish at the Chaps Guide. So thanks for listening, and I will see you again very soon.